Hello, and welcome to Booked Solid, New Canaan Library's podcast for young adults, new adults, and the forever young adult at heart. I'm your host, Kathleen, a collections librarian.
And I'm your host, James, an adult services librarian.
And today we're talking about Six of Crows.
Yes, Six of Crows, the book by Leigh Bardugo. It is a fantasy heist novel set in her Grisha-verse universe, famously brought into the literary world with her original series, which was the Shadow and Bone series. But this is a standalone story focusing on new characters to that world. If you haven't read any of her other books in this series, you can absolutely start with this one. It is a duology, but this is a fine place to start. And let me just give you a quick kind of introduction to the book that was on the author's website. Ketterdam, a bustling hub of international trade where anything can be had for the right price. And no one knows that better than criminal prodigy Kaz Brecker. Kaz is offered a chance at a deadly heist that can make him rich beyond his wildest dreams, but he can't pull it off alone. A convict with a thirst for revenge, a sharpshooter who can't walk away from a wager, a runaway with a privileged past, a spy known as the Wraith, a heartrender using her magic to survive the slums, a thief with a gift for unlikely escapes. 6 dangerous outcasts, 1 impossible heist. Kaz's crew is the only thing that might stand between the world and destruction, if they don't kill each other first.
It's a pretty good intro, pretty exciting.
Pretty good intro.
So, before we get started though, the thing we always do, our spoiler warning. We are going to be talking about absolutely everything. So if you haven't finished the book yet, pause this and come back when you're done, because we have a lot to talk about.
We do. And the first thing we have to talk about is, of course, what do we think? This is a loaded question. Of course, Kathleen, famously on record as saying that she is hesitant to enjoy a heist in media, and she also is a little hesitant to kind of get into some fantasy series. And this is a fantasy heist book. So the question becomes, was Six of Crows able to do the most audacious heist of all and steal our hearts? Kathleen, the answer?
So it gives me no pleasure to say this, because I think you were ready to apologize to me if, in fact, this was a terrible reading experience and I hated every second of it. But I enjoyed it. I don't know who I am anymore. Everything I thought I knew is a lie. But this was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the heist. I found it exciting. I enjoyed the fantasy setting, and I was swept away.
Well, I am glad to hear that. I will delete the apology that I have pre-written. I also really like this book. Coming into this world with no experience of, the pre-established lore and things like that, I was a little worried that might be a hang-up for me, but I found myself enjoying the characters, the heist itself, and just the general plot. This is a very well-done heist novel in the fantasy heist genre, so Leigh Bardugo hit that out of the park. And I think that we should probably talk about, in our discussion, we should talk about heists, because the heist is kind of the key feature of this book. How do you feel about heists in general, Kathleen?
Yeah, I have a lot to say about heists, and that's what got me into trouble in the first place. So I usually don't like heists because I get a little frustrated with them. There are some tropes that maybe I find a little annoying. Maybe I don't like. My least favorite thing about heists tends to be so many reversals and just kidding, we were in control the whole time. Sort of feels a little bit too formulaic, a little too much like chess pieces around the board. And I think particularly with heist movies, perhaps maybe this is my bigger issue. Not enough time to really spend on the characters, not enough time to really feel like real people. So for me, I think maybe the thing that really worked about this book is that we do get some backstories, we do get a little more of a character study. And so I didn't feel like I didn't care. I felt invested on that level before the heist even started. What did you think?
Yeah, I think I agree with you in a couple of those kind of opinions. I do want to also mention Leigh Bardugo, in an interview she's given about Six of Crows, she did mention that a lot of expectations of heists come from film and TV movies, that kind of media. And she notes in her interview that the whole thing is like a release of information, right? Like there's information that the characters know that the viewer or the reader doesn't. And what she does with this book that I find really interesting is that she has multiple points of views from characters, so you only know what that character knows in that moment and what that character is thinking. So the information release is a lot more kind of structured. It's not like everybody in the entire heist is pulling one over on the reader because you're stuck from that point of view at the time. You don't know which person is going to be doing what they're thinking or doing until it switches back to their point of view. So there's a lot of play there, which is really cool. When they actually get started with and it's not just in the heist, but it's in the beginning setup too. Things are happening as they're setting up from specific points of views. So you're getting Inej's point of view. And then you're getting Kaz's, you're getting Wyland's, you're getting Jesper's, and they each have specific things. So it's not like someone's in control the whole time. The control is relinquished and then kind of split amongst the characters.
I think that's a really good point, and maybe that's making me understand. I don't like being fooled by movies. Mm-hmm. I don't like feeling that they're tricking me. I guess it's supposed to be like a delightful magic trick, but then I'm angry. So in this, I think the way it's divided up, you feel a little bit more kind of like part of things rather than like, okay, let me just wait for that moment when they say, aha. Yeah. You don't get that here, which is good.
Yeah. And also, Six of Crows gets the benefits of the heist fiction too. Like it gets the benefits without any of like the real downsides that sometimes people run into. Right? So it gets the team of really interesting characters with conflicting motivations and often contradictory motivations. They have the shared interest of pulling off the job, of getting this person back to the Merchant Council of Caradem so they can get the big payout. Each of them are doing it for different reasons. But as the story goes on, you realize that there are some serious contradictions. Nina and Matthias, who are two characters who kind of were from opposing sides at first, both agree at the very start of like the heist when they get into the country that they're going to be robbing. Basically, they both agree to kill the person that they're trying to get out because they think that he's too dangerous to live. You have moments during the heist where Kaz, who's the leader, he encounters like a chief rival of his. And you think that he might be going off to kill that guy and kind of throw the heist into shambles because he's taking out personal vendettas. And there's a lot of these moments where you're not sure what's happening because, as we said before, right, it's switching to the point of view of other people. So you know in the back of your heads that Nina and Matthias have this plan to kill this guy. So whenever they're getting closer to the guy and there's no one else around, you're wondering, is it gonna happen? What's gonna happen? And as things kind of go off the rails, because they go off the rails. Very early on in this heist, you realize that the team does not have it all under control. And they are freewheeling, trying to desperately get some semblance of forward motion going on, which I think was a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. There's a lot of tension, but, I mean, first of all, I think the idea of, can a bunch of teens pull off a heist? That's intriguing to begin with.
Not just a heist. Can they extract a person from a foreign government's dungeon to basically keep this guy here? It's wild.
It's an impenetrable fortress. The odds are stacked against them. But, yeah, even though everything's going wrong, and I guess, in a heist you want everything to go wrong.
Yes.
But it goes wrong in wild and interesting ways. And she sets the tone very early for kind of, you don't know what to expect. So before they even leave the port, I think, really, there's a betrayal. There are things going wrong. Kaz Brecker, you wouldn't call him the hero of the story, but
certainly not.
He's the leader of the dregs. He rips a guy's eyeball out, which I was very shocked by.
Yes, the characters are very interesting. They're great. They're young. I believe the oldest is Matthias, who's 18. They're very young characters, and there's a lot of cool elements to them because there is a kind of found family vibe that kind of starts building despite everything because they're fighting a lot. Kaz is very kind of cold and calculating throughout the series, throughout the series of events that occur in this book. He's very much very kind of mercenary. He's like, I'm going to get the job done. I need these tools, who happen to be people who I'm bringing on the heist to get it done. And I'm going to use my leverage on them to give them what they want to, actually help me out here. For Matthias is a citizen of Firda, which is the country that they are going to rob. And he basically has a paper that will get Matthias his citizenship back. he lost his citizenship, or the equivalent to that. So he's got this held over him. He's got Inej is basically indentured to him in a sense, so, or indentured to the gang that Kaz is a part of. So if she helps him out here, she's going to get free. So there's a lot of these really interesting motivations that are just going on here with these characters. And despite it all, there's the banter that you want to see. There's really funny banter. Let me just see if we have a quote from that. Here's a quote from the book. Kaz leaned back. "What's the easiest way to steal a man's wallet? Knife to the throat?" asked Inej. "Gun to the back?" said Jesper. "Poison in his cup?" suggested Nina. "You're all horrible," said Matthias. "The easiest way to steal a man's wallet is to tell him you're going to steal his watch. You take his attention and direct it to where you want to go." So just kind of like a really quick, like, snap, snap, snap personality beats.
Absolutely. The dialogue is really good and also kind of educational because my takeaway from that was, oh, that is a great point. But no, it's so snappy, it's funny, and it does have a lot of personality. It's not just getting you from moment to moment. You're really feeling that these are characters who, despite maybe their competing goals and the different backgrounds they come from, really do have some weird affection for each other and really are coming together and feel that loyalty for each other.
Yeah. And I think that, we have to also give Leigh Bardugo extreme props for her world building. Coming into, a fantasy setting that we're both not super familiar with. I've seen the Netflix production of Shadow and Bone, which kind of takes these characters and makes them into like a new kind of heist setting. But I was not familiar with these from the book series, and I think Kathleen had not had any experience with it at all.
No experience at all, yeah. So to come into this, there was definitely a risk that I was not going to understand any of the context. But she has kind of that opening chapter that introduces some themes, some characters, some of the ways that things are already bad in Ketterdam. And then we just get into it, and information is kind of just parceled out very
intelligently. It's an intelligent, kind of distribution of information to the reader, to the other characters too. The world building is so fun. It's grimy. It's a grimy world. Ketterdam is a horrible place. It's full of indentured servitude, which is slavery in basically anything but exact name. There's really upsetting kind of pleasure houses. I think that's what they call them. Some really skeevy stuff. The people who live in the kind of slums and kind of working classish areas of this city are they're downtrodden. They're completely devoted to this endless grind to get money and to get some kind of security, the only kind of security that money can buy. And you've got this distant merchant council who has kind of huge, really high-handed kind of concerns that really don't trickle down to the lower classes, and you get a kind of sense of like why these teens are able to pull this off, because the environment that they've grown up in, the world that they've grown up in, is one full of war. It's full of just suffering and casual cruelty. It's rough. Kaz is a very difficult character, because he is so cold and calculating a lot of the times. And you learn about like what he did, like what happened to him to kind of force him to become this way. He and his brother were basically taken for a ride by some jerk who is a power player in the city, and he wound up with nothing. He wound up basically starving and almost drowning, and he says in his own words, like, he kind of broke, and it made him stronger, and the city kept breaking him until he became strong enough to resist it.
Yeah, everyone has their trauma, and you do get to see it, because I think one of the interesting things is my immediate reaction to Kaz, who is just committing these horrific acts of violence, is like, this dude has problems. I am not a fan. But with the kind of stuff that he went through, his brother dies basically as a result of how they're bamboozled when they arrive in the city, and he has all of the trauma from when he almost died, and basically wears gloves all the time now.
Yeah, he's not a very intimate person, and he's also developed a kind of aversion to just touch, period. based on that the experience of losing his brother, just the circumstances around that were so visceral and horrible that he can't do it anymore. You've got Matthias being basically a child soldier who was hunting people. Nina serving in a foreign country's kind of magical corp. So there's a lot of... Inej was kidnapped as a child and brought to Caterham to basically... who was bought and served in one of those pleasure houses that we mentioned earlier. So it's dark. There's a really dark upbringing for these people.
It's the kind of book you pick up and you're like, oh, okay, this is YA. And then you say, oh, is this YA? But I mean, it makes sense in the context that they would grow up hardened and that they would already have the skills to pull off a heist at 16, 17, 18 years old.
They've got very little to lose in some senses.
Mm-hmm.
They're willing to go as hard as possible to get it done. A lot of them don't have families anymore, or their families are so far away or distant or estranged that they're not, or they're trying to prove something to their families or provide for them, that they are willing to go and give everything. It's an interesting setting. The magic is interesting. I like the Grisha, different types of magic. You only really get a little bit of it with Nina, who's a heartrender who can kind of manipulate bodies and like pulses and things like that, and like disguise faces. It's pretty cool. But the focus is really on these characters and their attempt to rob this foreign country and steal someone away from there.
I love that the heist is for a person.
It's a person, yeah. But yeah, I think that this does have a lot of YA appeal. The teens are kind of going through it. They're really going through it, trying to set this off, and they have to learn to work with each other. And they do bond. They do, again, have the kind of found family thing kind of starting up. It's very cool to just read something like this. It's cool.
It was a good time. They do feel like teens in a way. Sometimes. You could just tell me that they were all 30 and I believe them. But they could also, but given the kind of circumstances that they were raised in, I could see these people trying to do this. But it's good. It does end on a cliffhanger. Yes.
Which I will apologize to Kathleen for, because I did not realize how much of a cliffhanger this ended on. So if you do read this book and like it, you will probably immediately want to pick up the second book.
I read this on a Kindle, and you get a little disoriented in a Kindle. I was at 77% thinking, gee, this seems like it's wrapping up, but I'm at 77%. And I got to the last chapter, and I finished it, and then it went to acknowledgments. And I almost threw my Kindle across the room. And you had warned me that it was a cliffhanger, but I was not prepared at that moment, at the 77% mark, to say, oh, well, that's it. When everything is going bad again, when everything, you're like, how are they going to get out of this? Well, you don't know. Yeah,
found out next time in the next book, right? But it's. I think that we both did have a good time with this. We like the characters, we like the world, we like the heist. It's a kind of a gritty read. But if you're into that kind of stuff, definitely might want to take a chance to pick this one up. So that's pretty much it that we have to talk about for Six of Crows. I definitely want to leave the finer details for the listeners to read themselves if they're interested. But I guess this might be time for some read-alikes. Kathleen, did you know any read-alikes? Or...
I was going to toss this one to you as not a reader of fantasy or heists. I'm not sure that I am the best person to, but you actually had a bunch that you were a big fan of.
Yes, I believe I tried to make you read several of these when I got the inclination that you might have liked this book. The real likes that I'm going to recommend are kind of focusing on like the fantasy heist setting. Foundry Side by Robert Jackson Bennett is a really cool story about a female thief who has a kind of special ability in a fantasy world. And there's an incredible heist, great character work, and it's a completed series. So it is a series, but it is a complete series. So if you start this, you'll be able to read it all the way through. A lot of fun, clever world building, an incredible magic system. Highly recommend it. Kind of pretty gritty, kind of a Ketterdam feel to the city that it originally takes place in this book. Another read that I recommend is The Lies of Loch Lamora by Scott Lynch. which is all about fantasy thieves. They're all basically priests to this thief god religion. That's a lot of fun to read as well. It's kind of a quintessential fantasy thief book. Not much more to say about that one, but that's pretty good if you just kind of are interested more in like the fantasy thieving element. That's pretty good. And then kind of a wild swing here is Mistborn, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. This is a book where the thing that's being heisted is kind of an empire. The kind of head honcho for this kind of band of thieves and con people is to eventually overthrow and topple a despotic fantasy government and a potentially immortal ruler. Also a series which is complete as well, so you'll be able to finish all of those. But those are all of my kind of recommendations for that. Any closing thoughts, Kathleen?
All of that sounds good. So which one do you recommend for me?
For you, I think that you wouldn't mind Foundry Side. I think Foundry Side would probably be the one that you would enjoy the most. Some fun character work there.
All right. Well, then maybe this is the new me, and this is what I'm learning is the fantasy heist novel is
the
my
chosen
new favorite.
genre.
Yeah, this is it for me.
What's next?
All right. Well, this is kind of an interesting pick. A little bit of your pick because you loved this book. A little bit of my pick because I agreed to do it when I was bribed with a cinnamon roll.
Yes.
And
I did not do the bribing.
So for next time, and you actually, well, I guess I should introduce. So we are doing Babel by R.F. Kuang, and you were actually able to see her at Lit Lunch.
Yes.
Because she was interviewing Madeline Miller.
Babel is a pretty incredible book. It is, once again, somehow a fantasy book.
All fantasy, all the time.
It's all fantasy all the time. It's the new book's solid motto. But really incredible book, kind of talking about translation, like translation between languages, and also about the effects of colonialism, imperialism, and kind of the British Empire. It's a fantastical book with a kind of magical background, but it really does focus pretty heavily on those elements. And whatever I'm saying about it, I'm doing it a disservice because it is truly a fantastic book. And I'm very excited to read it for the next episode.
I'm really excited. It is another enormous book, but it looks amazing, and it's such an interesting premise to have kind of that magical world, but mixed in with real world. Obviously, Oxford is a real place.
Yes.
So kind of this fantasy mixed in with
kind of fantasy and reality in a cool kind of mix. And we'll have a special guest, hopefully, for the next episode.
So stay tuned. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, everyone.